Welcome to Block 34 of our Celebrating the States Block of the Month. This is our version of the Delaware Diamond Block. For this block, you will need 4 fabrics: a dark, a medium, a light, and an accent. From the light fabric, cut 12 squares that are 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. From both the dark and medium fabric, cut 4 rectangles that are 3.5 inches by 6.5 inches. From the accent fabric, cut 4 squares that are 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. For the next part, you can draw a line corner to corner on the wrong side of all of the light and accent squares, or you can use diagonal seam tape as your guide. With the right sides together, place a light square on one end of a medium rectangle and sew corner to corner. Make 4 of this unit. After you've sewn the first line, if desired, you can sew a 1/2 inch away from the first line closer to the corner to have spare half square triangles that you can use on another project. I don't like to waste fabric, and this helps me work ahead on a future project. Once you've sewn both lines, you can cut between the lines. You can either use a scissors or you can use your rotary cutter. For ease of putting this block together, I'm going to suggest that you press these seams open. Normally, I would either press towards the corner or the darker fabric, but this time the open seam will help piecing later on. Make sure to press the extra half square triangle blocks too. With the right sides together, place a light square on the other end of the medium rectangle. Sew corner to corner to make a flying geese block. The medium fabric will be a large triangle, not a parallelogram. If this is the first block you've seen in our Celebrating the States Block of the Month, check the description below for the playlist for all of the other blocks available. Press the seam open. With the right sides together, place a light square on one end of the dark rectangle and sew corner to corner. Sew exactly as shown from top right corner of the wide rectangle to the bottom center. Double check that you have sewn it correctly before you sew the second seam and cut. Press from the back side and press the seam open. With right sides together, place an accent square on the other end of the dark rectangle and sew corner to corner. This seam should be parallel to the first seam. The dark fabric should be a parallelogram and not a triangle this time around. Make sure you're sewing it exactly as shown and double check before you sew the second seam and cut in between the two lines. Press the seam open and then we're ready to make the 4 corners of the block. All of the rectangle units should measure 3.5 inches by 6.5 inches. Using 1/4-inch seam allowances, piece the rectangle units to each other as shown. The medium fabric flying geese block should point to the parallelogram and the light fabric should be touching. The accent fabric should be in the corner. Press the seams in one direction, or if you prefer, you could press the seam open. Next, we need to sew 2 corners together to get 2 halves. The accent fabrics should be touching in the corner. Press both halves of the block the same way. That way, when you sew the block together by flipping one of the halves and having all the accent fabrics touching, the center seam should nest together. One last seam and our Delaware block is done. Press to one side. This block should measure 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches. We hope you will hit the like button, leave us a comment, share with your quilting friends so we can all have a great quilt, and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!